continue with one more panel debate now. We stick to Web3. And we talk about use cases that are changing the world, applications of blockchain technology in the Web3 space that are really driving adoption and that are making sure that when we talk about all of the potential cool things that we can do with this blockchain technology, that we can actually showcase real examples of that. So here on stage with us to moderate this discussion is Frederic Meyer from Bitkom, Policy Officer at Bitkom. Frederic, welcome. Thank you. Welcome. And then we have Patrick Hansen, Director for EU Strategy and Policy at Circle and the crypto Twitter king. Welcome, Patrick. Great to have you back with us. Bruno Pessoa, Country Manager for Brazil at Chiliz/Socios, and one of our members as well. Welcome, Bruno. Big round of applause. Thank you all. And Jacob Hample, Head of US Government Affairs at the Filecoin Foundation, another great and very active member of Blockchain for Europe. Welcome, Jacob. Thank you, everyone. Big round of applause for our panelists. And just a quick reminder that after this panel, we have a very quick coffee break. And then we continue with the last two more political panel debates. You all have a mic, so enjoy their conversation, gentlemen. Thank you all. Big round of applause.
No, it's working. Perfect. So thank you very much. And welcome to the panel. And we are going to discuss Web3 use cases changing the world. So today we are going to discuss how Web3 technologies are transforming existing and creating existing systems and transforming new opportunities. And the panel got already introduced. So Jacob Hample brings in the US perspective today, Head of Government Affairs at Filecoin Foundation and expert in decentralized data infrastructure. And we also got the Brazilian perspective today through Bruno, Country Manager Brazil at Socios and specialist in tokenization and fan engagement. And last but certainly not least, Patrick Hansen, Director EU Strategy and Policy at Circle, focused on stablecoins and EU regulation. So opening as like a good restaurant visit, it always starts with not the main course, it starts with a nice and little appetizer. So I didn't bring any food for you today, but we are starting with a quick question. What is, in your opinion, the most exciting Web3 use case that is currently changing the world? So maybe Jacob, do you want to start?
Sure, I can start. Yeah, I mean, I think personally that the thing that drew me to the blockchain space and to Filecoin specifically is that I think the most powerful thing that Web3 can do is enable groups of individuals or small businesses to come together and collectively compete with large institutionalized tech companies or other institutionalized large players in any sort of like economic vertical. So I think Filecoin is an example of that, where you have people who can set up their own become a storage provider, set up their own server racks and contribute to a global decentralized cloud network. But there's plenty of other ways that people can do this. DPIN has become, or decentralized physical infrastructure networks has become more of a hot topic in the crypto space. I feel like in the last few years, that's I think getting a lot more attention also from policymakers, which is great to see. But yeah, so I think these sort of collective endeavors in ways that you can create new economic paradigms are the most exciting.
Well, on my perspective, also taking into account the personal, as you mentioned, I think being born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, it's hard not to be a sports fan and have your on sports team that you support. So bringing back to my days that I was trying to become a professional footballer and having all that background is important for me specifically to go back and to think what really drove me and brought me into what we're building here. And specifically at Chiliz and Socios, we built, for those of you that don't know, we built a category called fan tokens, which is basically giving the sports fans a voice. I think we've heard a lot about this, about community and all these things within the crypto space. And we wanted to do something in the sports world to really allow these fans to participate in those decisions that clubs were allowing them to be involved in, more on the marketing side and things like that would really allow the teams to scale on a global level. It was very hard for clubs until then to be able to communicate and to interact and to engage with communities, especially those that are far from their core, far from where they were built. So I'm a big fan of bringing blockchain, bringing crypto into solving real world problems. How do we use this technology? And this really drives me back. I don't know if this is the most interesting and exciting, at least for me it is, going back to my personal background. So it really drives me in thinking, how can we use it to really solve real people's problem? And yeah, I think being able to allow these consumers, these fans to interact globally, giving them voice and the possibility to really have that ownership into what they do, because they're, at the end of the day, it's the fans that they want to participate in every different direction that the club allows them to. So yeah, I think the fan tokens, I'm a bit biased on that, but I think that's something that's very relevant and touches into the core of what we're building here.
Great.
Yeah. Quite funny, I didn't know you were always a professional footballer, so quite a change, right? You wouldn't sit here likely. So yeah, I mean, first of all, great to be back at the Blockchain for Europe Summit. Really great conference, so congrats to the Blockchain for Europe team, Stefan, Tomas and others, big kudos. So I totally agree from my angle. I don't know if it's really a use case, but what we're most excited about within Web3 is really the frictionless exchange of value that can power all of these different kinds of use cases, be it like fan tokens, be it like decentralized storage. The question is always, what do you use as your digital stable means of exchange within those use cases? And so that's where stablecoins naturally fit in and come in. I think Patrick Collison, the Stripe founder, he recently called it a superconductor for financial services, a stablecoin. And I think that applies pretty well to all kinds of Web3 services. So no matter whether you build a play-to-earn game or if you build a deep-in use case, whatever you do, you always need essentially tokenized fiat settlement lag, because usually people want to receive, earn stable value, and they don't want to necessarily deal with the volatility of Bitcoin and ETH and others. And I think that globally speaking, stablecoins are really the conductor that will provide all of and that will power all these different kinds of Web3 use cases.
Yeah, great. We are already diving deeper into it right now, and let's talk about revolutionary use cases even more in detail. So, Jacob, maybe the first one for you. What real-world applications do you see from Filecoin that are disrupting centralized systems right now at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I think some of the things that are closest to my heart are, I know Nomini mentioned yesterday, Hedera and Filecoin were both used to document war crimes in Ukraine. And using the kind of core functionality of cryptographically verified data storage and authentication. But then that's, I think, very important, but then at the same time, you need to be thinking about like different commercial opportunities and things too, and ways to disrupt some of the some of the existing sectors. The thing that I think is kind of most exciting with on Filecoin, or at least one of the more exciting things, is how it could fit into a future with edge computing. More and more we're seeing that edge computing is becoming more prevalent. People are realizing it's very inefficient to just send everything back to centralized servers at Amazon, Google, Microsoft for every sort of need for all their computational purposes. And when there's computation, there's also storage and there's data. And the core, one of the core innovations with the Filecoin network is its file system, IPFS, or the Interplanetary File System. And it's kind of a fun name, but the reason it's called that is that there is, the way that it works is it's not address-based storage, it's content-based storage. So instead of saying, I want the data stored at this IP address or this file location, you say, I want this piece of data. And it queries the network and tells you where it is and gets it to you the most efficient way. And so this has actually been tested successfully by Lockheed Martin in space by sending data to be analyzed from satellites. And so space is obviously the kind of extreme example of how these efficiencies can work. But even here on Earth, it's much more efficient to just get data from anywhere in the network where it can be delivered fast and efficiently, rather than pinging some server on the other side of the world. And we're going to see that more and more, I think, as like smartphones start to do different computing themselves instead of having to ping back to the cloud for every single kind of transaction.
Very interesting, thank you. And maybe we can add the financial and regulatory point of view to it. So Frederic, what role do stablecoins play in transforming traditional financial systems right now?
I mean, as alluded to earlier, I think stablecoins really are the working capital, both within DeFi of today. So whenever you want to provide liquidity, lend, spend, send, receive, whatever, you use, generally speaking, stablecoins. I think there were several reports published lately, also by Nick Carter and Castle Island Ventures, showing that actually if you look at overall global crypto transaction volume, roughly 3/4 of that are stablecoins. So I mean, I think that debate has been settled by now. The working capital within those use cases and markets are stablecoins, be it DeFi, be it Web3 services. If you want to spin up your decentralized social media, you will likely use a stablecoin in order to in order to essentially monetize the data that you and the content that you share on that social network. And same for any other use case. So I really believe stablecoins are that superconductor, that globally accessible liquid layer that settles all the value that is being exchanged on all these different kinds of use cases.
Very interesting. And you said social networks, for instance. So that brings in maybe your perspective on it, Bruno, because fans and brands are kind of your specialty. And how does tokenization change the relationship between those groups?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we look at if we look back, I think the best way to try to see the future is kind of look back and see how things evolved from the past. And if you look back and understand how clubs were built, how the sports entities were built, they were basically a group of people that decided, like, let's have fun, let's play a sport. These entities that are over 100 years old, it was basically people with the same interest in mind trying to pursue something together, which going back to the current days, I was making a joke earlier, it's like it's an autonomous organization without the D, because there wasn't the digital of the DAOs back in the day. So now you are allowed to create DAOs with new entities, with existing entities. You are allowed to tokenize athletes, stadiums, seats, tickets, and many other things. Who knows what else can be tokenized? Most of the things can be tokenized. Not everything should be tokenized. In our essence at Chiliz in Socios, we look at mainly from our development perspective. Of course, we have limited hours in our day to do everything, so we really need to focus on what we believe the most at heart. And I think going back to how we were built, it was a time whenever Chiliz was created with the fan tokens and how it started. If you look back, it was a time where clubs, it was during the pandemic basically, because the clubs, they couldn't interact with users from the clubs couldn't interact with the fans that were living right next to them. Imagine what they could do with fans living abroad or in a different city, in a different state, or even another country. So there was understanding there that the tokenization of fan engagement was something needed, that the clubs were not able to engage and interact with these users and provide utility, provide engagement, provide ownership on top of this. So we focus on this from the fan tokens perspective, but of course we are within the Chiliz group. The Chiliz chain is an EVM layer 1 blockchain that is permissionless. Anyone can build projects on top of our chains, and there are projects being built in many different directions, as I mentioned before. So we see a great landscape, a great opportunity on what we call the SportFi ecosystem. Yeah. That's exactly what we're building.
Okay, and now you could ask, why isn't the world yet a giant Web3 playground that nobody can ignore anymore? So, because we heard about amazing use cases now. So now maybe we can touch on the challenges and barriers that need to be overcome. So we also got next to the Brazilian perspective, and globally for sure, the US-American perspective, Jacob. So how is US policy currently dealing with the challenges of decentralized networks? And maybe one or two sentences, what are the challenges?
Yeah, slowly. I think the U.S. policymaking process is famously slow, with a lot of different avenues where things can stop and fail. I think this, as people have alluded to earlier today and yesterday, we're at a kind of interesting moment for blockchain policy in the United States, with not only a new administration that's spoken favorably about the technology, but also strict ticket control of the legislature and the executive by the same political party, which provides an additional opportunity to get things through the political process. But yeah, I do think that while I'm optimistic like others that we can finally start to have some of these more difficult conversations in the US, there's so many different opportunities for things to still get held up and get sidetracked or stop. So I think it's incumbent upon people who work in the policy space to keep on having conversations with policymakers. I think as far as what some of those issues are, I think the two kind of big legislative questions, at least, are stablecoin regulation and then market structure regulation. So obviously Circle has a very vested interest in the stablecoin regulation. I've worked plenty with their American team on that. But many, I think, see stablecoins as more the low-hanging fruit, as far as there's more broad agreement on the regulatory regime that should be put in place as far as the policy. What's in the stumbling block right now is all politics, but for market structure, I think there's still a lot of policy that needs to be worked out as well. So it's maybe a higher hurdle.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And so we already touched on it slightly, but cultural and economic challenges and barriers to adopting, for instance, tokenization in Brazil. What challenges do you see there?
Yeah, so I think the challenges when it comes to cultural, it might sound a bit cliche, but I think one of them is education, of course. I think learning about a technology that is less than 20 years old is quite challenging for people to get around it. So I think education is definitely one of them. More applications also, I think it's extremely relevant for people to understand applications that solve real world problems that people can relate to, because people don't use the technology for just the technology itself. They use it when they're able to solve their problems at the end of the day. We don't use WhatsApp because it's a cryptographic, encrypted platform. We use it because we can interact and send messages instantly and receive messages right back. So the application layer is as important as the education layer. And I think the third that is also very important is time, because for this, in order for these two to develop, you need time. The internet wasn't a big hit all of a sudden. It took time for all of this infrastructure to be built. So I think it's there is not a single thing that you would mention that would solve. It's not like a silver bullet, like we've heard here a few times. But I think it's a combination of things. But I believe that we are in the right path in order to succeed. We're seeing tremendous efforts also in Brazil on the regulatory side that's been evolving quite heavily. So it shows signs of definite progress, and the adoption has been bigger. If you compare adoption of crypto assets today, if you were to put a line with the internet back in the day, we are superior on comparison to the internet. So I think we're getting there, and of course having the regulatory backing there allows for more institutional power to provide more, and that also helps on the educational side and allows mainstream adoption at the end of the day.
Yeah. Since we are in Brussels, the beating heart of the European Union, and let's dive deeper into the regulatory issues. What regulatory barriers still exist in the EU, and how to overcome them, Patrick?
I mean, first of all, I would say in comparison, the EU is already a few years ahead. So the fact that we have the regulatory clarity is primarily with respect to stablecoins, and then crypto asset market structure is a positive thing. We have done a ton of work. That's what I spent most of my time on the last couple of years to prepare for that, and we're super proud that also this year we received the authorizations in the EU, an e-money institution license that allows us to issue our stablecoins, so USDC for the dollar and EURC for the euro, in a MiCA compliant manner here in the EU. So, and that's a huge amount of work that was necessary, but definitely worth it. And so I would say that's on the positive side. More globally speaking, I think the challenge both for stablecoins and then for Web3 services more broadly is that those are inherently global products mostly, and most of their benefits stem from the fact that it's a global settlement layer. It's a global protocol for money in terms of what a stablecoin is. Essentially, anyone can just build something on top, access it, benefit from the liquidity. They don't need to ask Circle for permission. And so when we think about Web3 use cases and creators being paid across the world, you want to make sure that on both legs of that transaction, there is regulatory clarity and compliance and etc. And I think the one challenge is that nation states and jurisdictions are national structures, right? And when they come up with their own regulatory frameworks for stablecoins, they often think about, I want a part of, for example, the reserve here in my own jurisdiction, to be sure. And if every single country proceeds that way, that will fundamentally break up the inherently global nature of these services and these products. It would fragment them if suddenly you would need, part of your business in every single country. And so I think what we will need now with every major jurisdiction thinking about stablecoin rules, crypto rules, what we will need further down the road is some way to streamline and align those global rules, to maybe think about equivalence of some regimes where a product that is regulated in some place can be used across other major jurisdictions, the G7 or G20 or whatever. But that's more forward-looking. That's a huge challenge that I foresee coming sooner rather than later. And I think that we would all be well served to tackle as an industry already today?
Well, so it's really interesting, and to dive deeper into it. So, what do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of Web3 by regulators at the moment? For instance.
I mean, I think at least here that's why I have most of my relationships and experience here in the European Union. You have, I would say, super well educated both policymakers and regulators about the topic. I don't think there is like fundamentally like educational problems on the topic. I rather think like the challenge is that sometimes they try to use analogies with traditional finance or traditional tech services that then end up not working in practice. If you think about whatever some rules for financial market intermediaries, if you apply the same to permissionless blockchains, it doesn't really work. And so that's more of a challenge. But on the educational side, I would say by now, luckily, we're pretty well placed.
Okay. And in terms of my restaurant comparison of the very beginning, now we are slowly but surely approaching dessert time. So future perspectives in terms of Web3 use cases. Jacob, how will Web3 change data sovereignty and power distribution over the next, let's say, 10 years?
Yeah, I think this is a very important topic. I think we're starting to see the rise of the data economy. I think people are starting to realize just how valuable their data is, not just individuals and their web browsing history, but also organizations like the New York Times, which is actively litigating with the generative AI companies about using their data sets for training. And so the one thing that we're excited about with the Filecoin network is by using that, by using IPFS, the file system, each individual data set is able to have its own unique identifier, and that can do great things in order to create a marketplace for data. You see that already with NFTs. All the NFTs, or almost all, I believe, NFTs on OpenSea are addressed with IPFS and stored on Filecoin, and that enables them, people to be able to trade these individual and unique assets with each other. And so applying that not just to collectibles, but also to data sets that could be training AI models, for instance, or doing other things, and also applying to not just small data that can be stored on chain, but very large data sets that you can then have in a Web3 native environment and still get all the benefits of being stored on chain when that's not really technically feasible. If you have petabytes and petabytes of data on there, I think can really unlock a lot of functionality and to create a market with property rights on the internet for data.
Yeah, interesting. And maybe continuing the perspective and view in the future, Bruno, where do you think what market will be dominantly for the next tokenization period? So,
well, being a little biased again, I think
outside of sports.
Outside of sports, well, I think personally, I believe that the entertainment industry has such a large potential of also being tokenized. It has a lot of similarities. When we personally look into the space, I think when we look at artists, when we look at content creators in terms of engaging with their audiences, I think we see some of the same challenges that there were in order to be able to engage with local audiences and allowing them to participate and to collaborate in a different way, where it's not a traditional membership where you pay to use. You're actually a part of that community. You actually own that community, and I think that the entertainment industries, that's definitely something that, again, being a little biased, I think we see a great opportunity worldwide in terms of tokenization as well.
Great, and bringing in the EU perspective at the very end again. So what role does the EU play in the global race for Web3 innovations?
Time will tell ultimately, but I think fundamentally the values, or at least the underlying ideology behind Web3 aligns pretty well with what the European Union usually seeks to achieve. So if you think about what is Web3, usually it's described on a high level as, read, write, own, versus, Web 1, read, Web 2, read, write. Web 3, we generally think about a blockchain-powered tech world, internet space where people are in control of their data, their identity, their assets. They can self-custody that, and they can transact, frictionlessly on the net. I think that's super well aligned with the European Union's vision of digital sovereignty. Your data that is neither belonging to either almighty powerful tech giants or, the monopolist, super powerful central state. Usually that's what the EU has been trying to achieve in terms of tech policy, be it with respect to social media, be it with respect to cloud service providers, AI, etc., etc. The question, what role will they play? I think they just have to seize that opportunity. I think the European Union has likely lost, the race for AI, lost the race for cloud services, etc. Web3 is a fundamental new opportunity for them. We are, at least as of today, the front runners with respect to regulatory clarity. So what I would like to see is just a huge economic, political push for that new tech here in the Union, and hopefully we can all, convince our own policymakers, representatives to seize that chance.
Okay. Pretty interesting, because you already answered my next question partly, because if you would have only one wish, you could wish for the Web3 space, what would it be and why?
Oh gosh, one wish. It's about a very broad topic. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that. I would probably wish that for the next, let's say, couple years in the European Union, we let the dust settle on MiCA. We look very pragmatically towards what works and what didn't work, and then we just see that as an iterative process and adapt and adjust those pieces that do not work without necessarily create new comprehensive rules for any new pieces of the tech. I think DeFi, NFT, my personal opinion is, let's leave that alone for now. Let's focus on what has happened and let's make that work and improve that over the next couple of years.
Maybe you wish, Bruno, for the Web3 space. Just one.
I hope we are able to maintain this sense, not only the sense, but the actual ownership that people have, that Web3 brings to people. I think if we're able to maintain this throughout the years, I think we have succeeded as an industry, and yeah, I believe that we are making progress in that sense. I think there is a lot still to be developed. But if I had one, you said only one wish.
Yes.
I would try.
Go up.
I would try and maintain as much as possible the ownership. I'll let people really own the asset, because it's the first time in history that you're able to really own and participate in what we call the digital asset. So.
Okay, Christmas time is coming closer. Maybe you get another, but Jacob.
Yeah, I would probably say market structure legislation in the United States, but also with the caveat of with what Patrick and others I think have mentioned too, of like equivalency frameworks across what the EU and other OECD countries to really make it more agnostic about where a company is based, so that we can truly leverage the global nature of the technology.
Okay, and to sum it up, today we explored how Web3 use cases and applications address real-world problems and challenges in the financial and regulatory, the fan and engagement space. And so we still have a lot to do ahead, and what the future could look like, we finally don't know. Final question for you, all of you. Again, what is the biggest promise that Web3 holds for the world? Just in 1 to 2 sentences. Bruno?
Yeah, I still think it's a different framework for how small businesses and individuals can compete collectively against entrenched groups that have lots of advantages and regulatory capture in very entrenched industries.
I think it's a new definition of value. What is value? How do you value value? And that brings exciting questions that follow up on top of it. So I think that's the promise that we should continue to develop upon.
I'll stick to the, I think, basic goal objective, and let's not lose that focus. True ownership of data, assets, identity on chain.
Okay. Thank you very much to our panelists and to you, our audience, physically in Brussels and online. And I hope you have gained valuable insights today, and keep following, hopefully, the next slot. Thank you.